Okay, everybody, thanks very much for making the time to attend Seminar 4 in our Legal Operations Masterclass series. Today, we're absolutely excited about sharing with you some of our insights in terms of how legal team performance can be validated through tracking of tangible outcomes through performance metrics and data analytics. It's a really, really exciting topic. There's a lot of quick wins that we're hoping to be able to share to you all. And like pretty much anything, there's an implementation which is easy to get underway, all the way down to very, very expensive implementations around data analytics and performance metrics. And one of the key messages up front that we want to share with you is that even the most simple approach to data analytics and performance metrics can make a superb difference to how your legal team functions. So this is not about, do I need a huge budget? Do I need massive internal support? No, these are things that most in-house teams are able to implement just because they decide to do so. So what we're going to try and do, like all of our masterclass series, is we're going to try and focus on what's practical, on what's relevant, and what we know works in practice. So hopefully you'll enjoy the session, and now we'll get going. So for those that haven't attended our series before, I'm Matt Glenn, I'm the Managing Director at Global Legal Solutions, and we'll be spending the next hour with you talking about performance metrics. Okay, let's get going. Set the slides. Okay, there we go. Okay, so firstly, welcome to the empirical data era. If you didn't already know it, you have firmly arrived. All in-house teams, no matter how big or how small, now operate in an environment where all decisions now need to be capable of justification, and the performance that was achieved as a result of a decision or a resourcing allocation you made is demonstrated. Okay, these are concepts which have existed in pretty much every business discipline, but has been relatively new to the legal domain. What we're going to do today to introduce you to performance metrics and data analytics is to start with a recap of RPLV decision-making. Now, RPLV decision-making is a strategic framework that we've developed to help bring a strategic connotation, strategic import to business as usual decisions made by an IHL team, this in-house legal team, to help them transform into a much more efficient and a higher performance team. The validation aspect is the fourth installment of the RPLV concept, okay, and that's what Masterclass 4 is about. So we're just very quickly going to recap on RPLV, and then we're going to take a look at why legal teams are suffering from low in-house value recognition, okay. We're going to introduce you to what data analytics and performance metrics are and why they're useful. Okay, what are the benefits that they can bring to your team? Then we're going to talk into the practical application in terms of how you can implement a basic bare bones data analytics agenda inside your legal team. And again, my opening comments, it's not something that requires much by way of resources. It just needs a willingness and appetite on your part to do so. We're going to then look at the broader spectrum of performance metrics. Now, in this webinar, we're going to talk about performance metrics as being like a key performance indicator that you use to chart your project, your progress. Data analytics is the science in terms of how do you crunch the numbers to see how you're performing. They are common bedfellows, but they have specific connotation as we go through the presentation. What we're going to do after that in part F is we're going to spend some time identifying where you can find the relevant data that you need to run a data analytics program inside your legal team. And then we're going to suggest a number of essential metrics. Now, depending on the size of your legal team, depending on what you do, depending on the support you have inside your business, there's a whole plethora of metrics that you can actually consider implementing, and you may already be running at the moment. However, our objective today is to nominate a couple of metrics that are going to allow you to immediately feel the power that analytics-based decision-making can bring to your team but minus the requirement for you to go out there and win over support of other stakeholders inside your business unit. This is very much something that'll be recommended based around a self-managed program. And then, as always, we're going to wrap up with some concluding thoughts and invite you to submit any Q&A that you would like to. As I go through the session, if there's anything that you would like us to focus on at the end, we will just submit it. There's a chat function there for you to do so. Okay, so this is going to be a blindingly fast recap of RPLV, because this is a masterclass series, and we've already covered in the first 3 installments the importance of understanding the full spectrum of resources that are available to your legal team, how it is that you consider the use of those raw resources based against the priorities of your team, usually set in the form of a legal department mandate or a group legal policy, and also strategies to how you can actually leverage the productivity resonance of each category of resource. So having done the RPLV, today's masterclass is about how do you validate and track the performance. So very quickly, RPLV decision-making, it's the framework that we've developed to help the in-house team deal with this new paradigm, which is this increasing compounding pressure applied by the business for the teams to achieve far more with far less. This is a perpetual challenge. It's not seasonal, it's not COVID related, it's something that's with us forever, okay? Now, RPLV is the decision-making framework that allows you to better address this challenge. It allows you to establish control, okay? And critically, it helps guide you to a more sort of legal operations mindset, something that we'll comment on as we go through. Now, data analytics, performance metrics is very much associated with the genre of legal operations, something you're going to hear far more about, particularly from us over the next 2 weeks. We've actually written a new book called The Ultimate Guide to Legal Operations, and we're going to be making that available to download very shortly. So RPLV is going to help you drive to achieve a more optimally efficient performance of your legal team. Okay. The only slide that I'm really going to focus on is this one, just to visualize some of the commentary I've already given you. RPLV is based around 4 principles. It's making sure you have a fullest understanding of all the resources that are available to you. Okay. In seminar 3, in Masterclass 3 rather, we spent a great deal of time helping you identify classes and categories of resources that you might not have been aware of. We shared with you strategies that allowed you to classify those resources into 5 neat categories. And then we shared with you a unique resource category cultivation strategy. So effectively, how do you help perform the sort of miracle of loaves and fishes around what your resources can achieve? The prioritization point is really key. Every day, in-house teams world over are making compromised decisions. They don't have enough resources to go around to meet the need that's tasked of the legal team. So leaders of IHL teams have to decide what projects are going to get my resources. Now, you can't make a prioritized decision unless you actually truly understand the priorities of your legal team. And that's an area that most legal teams, and I'd go so far as to say is 90% of in-house legal teams, do not actually operate with a formal authority mandate, where they're clear about what they're responsible for and what the goals that they want to achieve as reflected in the group legal policy might be. Leverage, I've touched on, is once we understand our resources, other decisions that we can make compared decision A and decision B, both equally important. But if I go with decision B, the resonance, the ongoing value that having allocated my resources to decision B is going to bring to the business, does that make it the decision to go with? It's a very important concept. Today is all about the validation, okay? We've identified our resources, we're making prioritized decisions, we are factoring in what the productivity leverage profile is of that decision, and now we want to validate data analytics, performance metrics. Now for those, and I encourage everybody to do this, for those that want to download the slides, the next few slides are available just to reinforce the principles around RPLV. But convenience, if you haven't already read our RPLV decision-making framework, click the link and it'll take you to the white paper. The 4 things that I just want to share before moving very swiftly on is that simply by implementing RPLV, pretty much every one of our clients has been able to enjoy 30% plus productivity boost. That is, no need to spend any more, okay? Working the resources you've got, but just creating a little bit of space in your decision making to apply RPLV principles has really moved the needle in terms of what kind of productivity boost you can achieve with what's already on the balance sheet. Very important in today's context. It brings a transformation context to your business as usual. When we talk about transforming legal teams, we're not talking about booking an appointment with McKinsey, okay? We're talking about how it is that you can bring a slightly different thinking to the business as usual, so that over time, you will affect a complete transformation of your in-house team. That is the viable pathway for most legal teams. Few are going to be Fortune 500 companies. They're going to hire in some big consultancies that create a lot of work for us too when we try and fix up their projects to come in and affect some kind of massive overnight transformation. That pathway doesn't work. We've got an 85-15% matrix there, ratio there. 85% of what you're doing at any time should be absolutely business as usual, but at least 15% of your business as usual should be done with a strategic transformation intent. Key point just to reiterate again, if you're applying RPLV and just working with what you've got and creating that space to apply that decision making over a 2-year period, you should affect complete transformation. The golden rule is strategically consider your approach to the business as usual. The RPLV framework allows you to do that. So the remaining slides just in this section, I'm actually just going to scoot over pretty quickly because I want you to consume them in the course of the download, okay? Having given the broad contextualization in terms of validation in that it's the fourth limb of our four-legged chair designed to supercharge what your in-house team can achieve, there are a number of advantages, right? Inexpensive, incremental, real change, self-authored, and success tends to attract more success, okay? But what today's focus, the balance of today's session, is really to focus on that validation. That validation principle is something that we achieve through implementing a performance metrics regime and using the science of data analytics. That sounds more impressive than it is, but crunching a few numbers to see if we can't better inform ourselves so that we can have a more strategic application of RPLV principles. So let's go a little bit further in terms of setting the scene, in terms of why are legal teams suffering from consistently low value recognition? Now, I'm sure some of you straight away are going to put your hands up and say, no, my team, we're most valued inside our organization. Wonderful, well done to you, but consistently across the industry, and I'm painting with a broad brush, there are exceptions, there are notable exceptions, but most teams tend to suffer from lower value recognition than they would ideally like. Some inconvenient truths. The presumptive view is that most in-house teams are often erroneously considered as not being business enablers. We hear too often an internal client saying, my legal team slows things down. Okay, it takes too long to get things, I'm better off just trying to do it myself. One of the absolute truths is that the way in which legal teams have been run has traditionally operated outside of conventional business norms. Okay? If you look at finance, if you look at HR, if you look at marketing, so many of these disciplines have already embraced principles such as having operational support, having a business support executive to allow those the key principles in those business units to focus on core tasks. Too many legal teams, and there is also some regional nuance around this. Too many legal teams are often considered as being administrative and support functions. IHLs are frequently accused of not speaking the language of business, which we all know is numbers. And again, that's another example of how IHLs have operated outside business norms. And IHLs have traditionally struggled to objectively measure the performance that they achieve, the value that we actually bring to the business. But if you look at the cartoon there, you've got very, very few people who are queuing up for the inconvenient truth, and so many looking to attend a reassuring lie. Pretty much whether in private practice or in-house, most lawyers tend to think that what they contribute, what they do, what they mean to the world is far more important than the rest. Okay, we do tend to think a little bit differently. And there's a lot of reasons why we should, but we think it's a little bit inconvenient to accept that actually we do need to massively improve what we're doing in terms of supporting the business. Okay, so what are some causes in relation to this less than ideal level of value recognition? Well, there are some chickens and there are some eggs, and we could have a sort of existential debate around what came first. But here are just some ideas which hopefully that we can relate to and start helping you think about the need for greater validation around what we do. Legal services are, by their very nature, intangible. And there is some sort of existential question around this, right? A lot of what we do goes unnoticed, okay? Saving people from themselves, steering the ship a little bit left, a little bit right. We do all of these things, you know, in a couple of minutes, we could pick up an indemnity exposure of tens of millions of dollars. But what we don't leave behind is buildings, okay? We don't leave behind pieces of engineering that people can say, oh, I see what it is that you actually did. It's intangible. And go even further. If we do our jobs really, really well and there are no problems, you will find inside your organization, you'll evolve to a point where the bean counter in the center will probably say, well, what's the point of keeping this cost on because we don't have any issues, which kind of misses the point and overlooks our contribution altogether. Too many IHLs, and I mentioned this at the top of the session, too many IHLs are operating without clear reference points. This is a really simple observation, but it's very profound. If you're trying to judge the performance or demonstrate the performance of your team, how can you do that unless you have a clear sense of mandate or domain authority that you are able to exercise control over to judge your performance, okay? This is an extremely challenging proposition in the context of COVID, where everybody's saying, you know, even further, greater cost cuts, more contribution, etc. This is a very timely moment to pause and say, okay, I'm with you. I know we need to achieve more, but can we just be absolutely clear on what I'm responsible for, okay, inside the organization? A chicken. Most in-house teams are expensive and are chronically under-resourced. We've got a nice slide coming up that really illustrate this. But most in-house, or all in-house teams are operating in an environment where there are exponentially growing legal and compliance requirements and either a reducing or a finite level of resources available, okay? There are very few legal teams, you know, out, you know, tobacco industry is an example who can't afford to be under-resourced, but very few legal teams out there have all the resources available to meet all the requirements that they are required to meet. IHLs are also tarnished by association with private practice. Lawyers, private practice lawyers in particular, rate something like 160 odd in terms of professions and jobs that people will associate with a positive score, all right? And so there is a bit of blowback from the wonderful reputation that our private practice colleagues have allowed the industry to enjoy as it comes to the in-house lawyers. And then, of course, there is, and this I think is a chicken, there is another blowback. In-house leaders have, in many respects, been just as guilty of embracing some of the inefficiencies as private practices have. There are a number of practices, and we'll unpack this a little bit in the context of this. I won't spend too much of it. It's a topic for another day. But in-house teams have not been run as efficiently as they would like. This is not about blame. This is about working out what we can change to achieve improved performance and to not have a realistic, objective evaluation of what it is that you do, which is the whole point of data analytics and performance metrics, is counterproductive. Okay, so these are some of the causes. But how do we recognize whether or not these are in play in your legal team or in your organization? Well, we've broken down some of the indicators of low value recognition into hard and soft factors. Now, hard factors would include indirect reporting lines. You know, if you don't have a direct reporting line to your board or to the principal of your business, you know, it is an indicator of how legal is perceived inside your organization. Access to resources, number of personnel. If you're chronically under-resourced, there's obviously, you know, the extent to which you're under-resourced, because everybody is, can actually be a reflection of how you're valued. Lack of group legal policies and legal team mandates. Again, if the centre, the board, the management, the C-level really value what the legal team will do, they will have no issues in terms of documenting what that clear mandate is. You can read the rest at your leisure. Softer factors, these can also be quite important. Internal client perception, right? If you were to walk the corridors of your business, how would the average internal client user view your legal team? High attrition rates. Really, really interesting statistic that's emerged over the last 3 years. The notion that going in-house represented a viable a career path which is highly differentiated from the private practice environment is actually changing quite considerably. The pressures associated with the in-house role are growing, and in many cases as great, if not greater, as in-house, okay? So what we're actually seeing is higher than ever attrition rates. And attrition rates inside businesses where the legal function is not respected, right? And therefore doesn't have the right platform it needs to operate to be effective, can be a really, really, really telling indicator in terms of how the team's viewed. Comparative career trajectories. I mean, there's no question that legal and compliance is one of the fundamental pillar disciplines, right, or tenets of any business. If you get that horribly wrong, you may not have a business. But yet look at the people that are working in the legal team and look at the structure of their career progression. What kind of trajectory, what kind of progression do they enjoy? These can also be indicators in terms of how they're valued. We see too many organizations where there is salary caps on IHL leaders, which are significantly lower than other comparative business units. Decision-making authority, scapegoating, organizational visibility. These are also examples of low-value recognition. Now, the big question is, we've covered today's sessions about validation. We've covered about its importance, right? Because if you aren't valued, then how are you going to get the platform to affect the kind of change that needs to be made in the businesses that are actually being required of us to make? So what we want to do now is to just give you one last snapshot before we actually drill into what are data analytics, etc. We wanted to spend a bit of time creating a sense of context that you can relate to, that you have empathy for, so that you're going to be more receptive to some of the principles that we're sharing with you. The operating reality, so notwithstanding that you've got lower than ideal in-house value recognition, the operating reality that you're dealing with is that all teams are actually operating in a climate of growing legal and compliance requirements, greater workload, fewer resources. You've got the overall context of digitization. Some consider that an opportunity, some consider that a threat. Clearly it's an opportunity, and you need to transform, right? What that's created is a pressure cooker environment. And we've got some adjectives there to describe the kind of pressures that most of in-house clients that we've encountered have expressed concern with, okay? The operating reality is not only low value recognition, under-resourced, but another reality that most don't actually give any thought to or appreciation to or recognition is that in-house teams have made extraordinary positive contributions to the businesses they serve, okay? In many cases, they've saved the business for themselves. We're seeing it now, right? Massive knee-jerk reactions by the leadership of many business to the incredible difficulties associated with COVID. We've got a long history of steering deals through minefields. We talk egos back down from the edge. We deal with problematic personalities inside an organization. We find solutions to seemingly impossible problems. We're kicking down barriers to new markets. We're keeping our shareholders informed. But what we haven't done, despite the fact that we've done so many great things, is that we've not bothered or not thought to or didn't have the tools to actually report back to the business the value of our efforts. What have we actually contributed to the business, okay? And that's what makes this topic so exciting for pretty much every in-house team. Notwithstanding we operate in an incredibly challenging environment, we kind of have contributed to low value recognition because we haven't told anybody what we've done, okay? And there's a golden rule that applies. If you can't prove it, then it didn't happen. If you can't demonstrate it, it didn't happen. Like I said at the introduction, our industry doesn't per se leave behind a new building, okay? We don't leave behind a piece of artwork that others can admire. We operate in an intangible space, but that is not to say that we can't bring together an analytics program, performance metrics program, and start talking the number of business to demonstrate the value of what we do. And that's really exciting, because the fact that we haven't traditionally reported our performance means there are a stupendous amount of quick wins that are available for everybody on this call and everybody reading the associated white paper and listening to the recording of this webinar. Okay, so what are we going to do about it? What are we going to do about that conundrum? More work than we can handle, certainly more than the resources we got to hand, a less than ideal perception from the internal client. Well, there's plenty we can do about it. Here are a few things. Let's start using basic data analytics. Let's start utilizing performance metrics. Let's make sure we're validating the good work we're already doing, okay? And through the application of data analytics, why don't we start applying even better quality decision-making to our business as usual by accessing some basic data that gives us deeper insights into the challenges that we face and the benefits of option A over option B, okay? What in-house teams now need to do, after having identified all the resources available, understanding the priorities against which they need to be applied, considering productivity leverage strategies, we need to validate, okay? We need to validate everything. We need to validate our decisions. We need to validate our performance. We need to validate our needs, okay? If we are submitting an end-of-year budget for the coming year, we need to be able to demonstrably set out why it is that we need what we've asked for. Critically, we must demonstrate outcomes, right? Outcomes are your platform for future empowerment. We've got to demonstrate our value, our contribution, our improvements. I think you get it, okay? That's the theme of today, validation. So, part C. What are data analytics and why are they useful? We're going to give you a 30,000-foot snapshot, and we're going to introduce you to some of the benefits in terms of what these kind of programs can bring to your team. Performance metrics. Performance metrics is basically, think of a service level agreement. A service level agreement means you focus on a couple of data points will tell you most about the performance of the service that you've contracted for. It's the same principle. When we talk about legal department performance metrics, we're talking about honing in on a limited number of key metrics that will tell us most of what we need to know about how we're performing, okay? Imagine walking into a doctor. What's the first thing they do? They take your blood pressure, heart rate, body mass index, listen to your lungs, etc. There are 6 vital tests that they can take, and in minutes, they'll know as much as 80% about your overall condition. Performance metrics work in a similar way. And what we want to do when we apply it to your legal team is we want to start translating the goals that have been set for the team into tangible and measurable units, okay? They must be objective in nature and not subjective. The second element is, obviously, once we've come up with the metrics, we want to track our progress against achieving them, and as an ongoing challenge for an ongoing requirement of an in-house team, we must be continually improved, okay? This is why the IHL has entered the empirical data era. Increasingly, we have to track our performance and we need to improve our performance. And the way we do that is looking at actual data, which tells us how we've gone 1 month against the previous month or quarters, as it may be. Analytics. Well, legal analytics, and again, let's not get caught up too much in the distinction between performance metric and legal analytics. They are common bedfellows. But legal analytics, if you needed a definition, is the process by where you extract actionable knowledge from available data that's going to allow you to assist in decision-making that stretches finite resources against and to meeting the growing legal and compliance requirements of your business, and in a way that delivers optimal productivity performance from that category of resources. And a small thing, right, it also allows us to demonstrate the level of performance that we've actually achieved, okay? Performance metrics, the goal that we've set that lets us know we're doing a good thing, and data analytics, the data that allows us to demonstrate that, validate that, but also to give us data that allows us to adjust course, right? To trim the sail, as it were, and make sure that we're staying on track. Now, the case for data analytics is really quite self-evident. And it's really captured in the first bullet point there. The business community are demanding far more to be achieved by in-house legal teams from either the same amount, but in most cases, less resources than ever before. No one's going to be writing us blank checks. No one's going to be allowing us carte blanche in terms of increased headcount. What we need to do as a community is to make far better quality resource allocation decisions, okay? There have been a number of subjective historic decision-making deficiencies. Now, I don't want to unpack, I'm going to spend a little bit of time unpacking this particular point without going too far off-piste, because it's about what we can change, okay? But historic decision-making has, for many legal teams, been made on the basis of hunches or guesses or instincts. Vendors have been appointed on the basis of old boy networks, right? Informal relationships, as opposed to data-driven assessment of the merits of one service provider over another, okay? Leaders of in-house teams have, in many respects, demanded unquestionable control over how their team works and submission to their views on how things should work. It hasn't been an environment for collaborative and contributive discussion in many cases. There are exceptions. Perhaps that's a bit of a private practice blowback. But the net result is that there have been frequent, inefficient decisions that have materially prevented the business from maximizing the value that could otherwise have been achieved. Qualitative decision-making backed by real data is something that's required. And you only have to put your head out the window and you can sense that in the air. There are no more exceptions for these are the rules that apply for the rest of the business, and these are the rules that apply for the in-house legal teams. Nicholas Cummins, I think that's his name, who's a chap in the UK at the moment, that advisor, rules for him, rules for the rest. That doesn't apply anymore. So empirical data is really the number that's used by the language of the business. It's how other business units, and it's how we as a community now need to increasingly work. We have to conform to center. We have to start talking the language of business. We've talked about low value recognition, despite the fact that we're contributing value all day, every day. And yet it's on us because we've not been able to demonstrate. The case for data analytics is that almost every single work process, workflow, represents a rich seam of data that can be harvested and offer incredible insights. And we're going to give some examples of what those insights might be. Data analytics represents a viable, powerful support tool that you can acquire a basic competency in very, very quickly. So the case is no more complex than this. You've done a lot of great work. Make it official, make it count. And by the way, see point one, the business demands more from less. It offers, critically, some really easy wins, and it offers a pathway for us to consistently improve how it is we operate. We've coined a small little expression here that going forward, IHLs must vie for success, okay? We've got to validate and demonstrate performance. We've got to look over the fence into other business disciplines, into other industries, and we need to start imitating better yardsticks. Okay? We need to replicate some of the practices in terms of how other business or business divisions are managed. We also need to eliminate poor decision making. RPLV principles, again, finding literally the minutes that it takes to find space in your day to apply these principles will, over time, naturally help you vie for success to deliver that. So the benefits, well, we could talk for literally a day on the benefits associated with legal performance metrics. This is going to be the subject of an entire chapter of the legal operations ultimate guide to legal operations that we're putting out, I think it's next week. But those benefits really are as follows. A little bit of data can drive significantly better decision making. Unquestionably, it's going to allow you to make better uses of the resources that you've got. It also allows you to make or justify the decisions that you make with far greater clarity. It inculcates a performance management culture, performance managed culture inside your legal team. It allows you to report performance. It allows you to embark on a strategy of perpetual optimization that you can validate through data. And data can actually help you achieve that optimization. It aligns you with the center. That is, it aligns you with the central practices of your business, a common language which others will understand, making it far easier for them to recognize the contributions that you're making. It's also the fuel for ongoing legal team transformation. If you can demonstrate objectively, impartially, through empirical data, the success that you've had with your early transformation initiatives, corporate culture dictates that everybody likes a winner, okay? You are more likely to attract the support that you need from key stakeholders if you can demonstrate a history of success. IHL leader career progression. Without any doubt at all, we are already seeing that the IHL leaders that can turn up, not just with a CV that says, I work for company X for this amount of time, but rather that no longer cuts it. Whilst I was there, I achieved this. I achieved a 60% reduction in contract closure time. I saved X many hours, man hours associated with this workflow. I presided over the automation, etc. These personnel, these leaders are going to enjoy an entirely different career trajectory going forward, and remuneration and benefits are commensurate with that. Proven success. Data analytics in a modest application, all the way down to those that have resources to more complex implementations, they have been proven to succeed, okay? They are as instrumental as diet, exercise, and good quality sleep on your health. And obviously, it's going to achieve, and this is not unhelpful, greater recognition in terms of the contributions that we make. And who would want to work in a profession where we get recognized for what we do? Okay, so we understand what it is. We understand that it's a fundamental tenet of RPLV decision-making. We understand why it is that perhaps, we're not valued as much as we should be. And we understand, the benefits of it. But how do we implement it? And I think this is probably the point where most think, oh my gosh, this is where I'm going to be presented with a solution which is beyond our means, or I don't have time for it. The good news is that's not the case. Implementing a basic data analytics program is as simple as these 5 points. Okay? Number 1, you need to decide what do you want to measure and why. When you examine the RPLV white paper, you will see that there's some logical starting points in terms of what to validate. What's important to the business? What moves the needle for the business? What does the business value? They're great ideas into where to start. The second step is you need to be able to locate and obtain the relevant data. If you need to bring in a forensic accounting data engineer, then that's probably not the right data set for you to start monitoring and drawing insights for. It needs to be very simply obtained and easy to work with data for your initial basic implementation. Once you've got the data, if necessary, you might need to clean it and structure it. That's fine. We're going to talk about the legal services request form, all right? Garbage in, garbage out. You want to be very clear what your client actually wants. A single form will be a great repository of data, and extracting it and using that which you need to monitor particular metrics is what we're talking about in terms of cleaning and structuring the data. Then you need to run the analysis, okay? What is the data actually telling you? How many contracts did you close this month? How much time did it take? How long did the renewal process take? How many instructions did we receive? Okay, run the analysis. It's a comparative exercise. And then you draw your conclusions, right? And you make decisions based upon the results. Pretty much everything that is transformative tends to be really simple. When things get really, really complex, you need to dong it on the head with simplicity. And these 5 basic steps are incontrovertible truths. This is what a basic implementation looks like. So now we understand how to implement, and who would have thought that would have taken 90 seconds? What kind of metrics are people actually monitoring? Well, there's a diverse spectrum of available metrics out there. In fact, there is really no limit in terms of the kind of things that you can actually monitor. Everything today is E-enabled, okay? Data exists absolutely everywhere. Some common genres or general themes in terms of what in-house teams that have embraced data analytics and performance metrics are as follows. There are metrics, a little bit like your trip to the GP, that monitor overall performance and productivity of a team. Okay? They're holistic-based metrics. They're practice group or team-based productivity metrics. Individual loyal performance and productivity, so support staff. The mix between in-sourced versus outsourced legal work is a common theme. A very, very common theme, and we're going to unpack this a little bit to give you a little bit more flesh on the bone as to why it's valuable and what kind of insights you can glean. External counsel costs and performance. Overall financial performance by relevance to, insert, matter, task, practice group. But these are genres. What are some examples of actual possible metrics? We've got just a small selection of the kind of metrics that teams have been known to implement. We are not saying for a millisecond that these are the kind of metrics that you must implement. To the contrary, we're saying that your first foray into data analytics should be based around the smallest possible number of metrics. Okay, we're setting ourselves up for success. But the kind of things that you can obviously monitor is team attrition rates. Okay, how happy is my team? All the way down to budget versus anticipated budget versus actual spend. Even more subtle metrics such as the average time it takes to process a request from the business unit. Now, the key point that we want to make is to reinforce there is literally no limit to the number of metrics, but the key principle for a successful metrics program is start with very, very limited number of metrics. We've got a case study that we'll share with you in a few minutes' time. We'll show you the complete and utter highway to hell, as it were, in terms of trying to record absolutely every aspect of your performance, and particularly when that involves attaching unrealistic expectations. So this is a bit of a sample. If you want to understand a full availability of KPIs that your legal team might want to put in place, we actually have a solution. You can visit the Legal Operations Centre and go for GLS Legal Department KPI Manual. Great resource. It'll show you what metrics are there, how you can implement them, what kind of insights you glean, etc. But what we wanted to do, as promised, was just give you a tiny little case study for the merits of restraint. Okay, we were introduced to a Middle Eastern government authority that had obtained a Big Four management consultancy firm to come in and put in KPIs in place for the legal team. And the metrics that were put in place were really quite absurd. It ranged from you must answer the phone within a number of rings, and you must win 85% of all of your litigations, but without making sure attendant resources or funds were available for that. The result was, unfortunately, none of those KPIs were consistently met. Complete chaos inside the legal team. Morale was low. Retention became a massive problem. The GC, unfortunately, lost his mandate, and the legal team lost control of their budget. And the lessons that we took out of that is totally inappropriate KPIs. Excessive KPIs are going to set you up for failure. Okay? And we're going to repeat that point for you because it's just so valuable. All right? But the key message is, particularly given the direction, the way the wind is blowing, right? Everybody wants legal to transform. Everyone legal to rationalize, to demonstrate more value. If you don't self-author your engagement, then you could end up with some consultant, and consultants will advise you on anything. I'll just change the name on the PowerPoint slide and send it off to you. If you don't self-author, you could have unrealistic metrics imposed. Okay, self-authored change is one of the key benefits that we advocate around RPLB, places you in control of your agenda. Okay, so how do we help you decide on what to focus? Well, the primary consideration is really something that I've mentioned. What is important to your business? What allows you best to demonstrate your value? What enables the best possible operational decisions that you can be making? They are the primary considerations. And unapologetically, I'm going to share the following with you. You work in a corporate environment, you do need to be political. If you have a resourcing decision, choice, option A and option B, they're both equally important. But option A is totally intangible. If you do it, yes, something important is met, but you have no ability to demonstrate the value to the business. We are going to say to you, absent someone else finding budget, it doesn't affect your balance sheet, you should always go with option B, okay? Or at least there's a presumptive view that you should, okay? You do need to become more political, because if you are unable to demonstrate your value, then you are unable to create, at the rate that's ideal, the platform from which you operate. Some other factors in terms of considering what to focus on, we've touched on, is the availability of data, of the data, okay? Again, if you have a third-party consultant coming in, they're probably going to start recommending to you, data mining solutions, all sorts of things. But if you don't have control over it in the first instance, right, it's probably not the best first step. It's not to say that such more investigative techniques, more difficult to implement diagnostic techniques won't yield great data, but it's not the right first step. So you need to be focusing on metrics that are easy to collect, easy to process, and easy to record. And again, with the theme of being political, you need to focus on metrics that you know you can improve, right? You've got to be setting yourself up for success. So this is one of those sort of dichotomies. Well, I don't want to bring a spotlight to an area where I know our performance is not great. We're saying to the IHL community, be braver than that, okay? Look at it from a different perspective. If you can start tracking where you are, and through a voluntary self-authored program, start producing empirical data to say, because of the changes that you've made, these are the improvements, and they will be significant if it's an underperforming area, that's setting yourself up for success. Another factor too will be, to what extent do you focus on workflow specific? So metrics associated with the performance of your contracting function, as an example, versus those talking to or speaking to the performance of the department, such as number of instructions that you've processed, evidencing the overall workload of the team. Now, the answer is you need to find your own balance, and no one knows your team and your environment better than you. But see point one, primary considerations, right? Consider it in the round of what's most important in your business and what allow you best to do that. So the key principles are, and we've covered this theme a number of times, please start slowly, okay? Start slowly. There's no rush with this, but focus on what's simple and easy, and prove success before tackling more complex metrics. Avoid that Middle Eastern government authorities experience of diving right into the deep end without asking yourself the question, do we know how to swim? Okay, changing gears just a tad. If we're not talking about a IT systems diagnostic-led first step into data analytics, where can I find this data? Where can I get it from? We're going to give you some basic insights because, as I said at the top of the session, we're trying to give you basic principles known to work, which you can implement in a self-managed fashion. Firstly, there are 4 categories of data that you may wish to look for: descriptive, diagnostic, predictive, and prescriptive. Now, in the ultimate guide to legal operations, in our data analytics performance management section, we'll break that down a little bit more. But the point that we want to say now is descriptive diagnostics, such as It was the best of times, it was the worst of times, it was between seasons. That's not what you need. You want hard data, okay? So we want you to focus on data that allows you to compare and contrast, right? And it's more sort of diagnostic in nature, right? As opposed to anything else. We want qualitative data scores where we can show how the needle moves. The three most effective sources of data, and I hasten to add, we're highlighting three because we want it to be something you can access when you go back to your desks, well, when you ever get back to your desks, okay? There are lots of sources of data. Every workflow out there contains data. But the three most effective sources of data for a self-managed implementation around basic principles, without question, the legal service request form, okay? The legal service request form is without doubt the most crucial, critical source of data. When analysed, and by the way, for those that don't know what a legal service request form is, check out our white paper on it. It'll tell you what they do, what should go into it, etc. But basically, garbage in, garbage out. A legal service request form is the instrument that you have the business submit if they need support from your team. Okay, it's a way of regulating through a single ingress point the request requirements that are being submitted to your team. When you analyse it, it tells you precisely what the in-house team is doing, for whom and how often, and we're going to unpack a little bit more about the powerful insights available to that. Now, legal service request forms can be simple, they can be complex, they can be paper-based, they can be electronically based, etc. But we need to bring some conformity and structure and discipline about how the business is asking for support from the legal request. And by doing so, you create an extraordinary source of data that allows you to deal with all of the challenges we've flagged in this presentation today so far. Billing data, right? It's going to identify what your team cannot currently handle itself, right? And it's easy to break down into more quality data. In fact, we're going to unpack that in a slide or two from now. Internal clients. Internal clients are excellent sources of data. They are the client, what they think, what they need, are they satisfied with the service. It's an incredibly rich seam of data. And as I say, whilst these are three different sources of data, they are by no, no small margin the most important pieces of data or sources of data that you can access in order to start gleaning some serious insights and to demonstrate what it is that you're doing. Now, notwithstanding, there are quite literally hundreds of metrics that you could potentially start monitoring in your legal team. We wanted to introduce 6 that we thought are basic or essential metrics. But in doing so, right, we wanted to preface or put in place some assumptions. These are analytic basics to get you started, right? They are first steps. They're programs which are designed to be self-managed, intentionally simple. The availability, they can be implemented by extracting data from a single email account where all instructions are copied to a single email account, and there you've got a repository of lots of data you can harvest. It could be you've got a instruction booking system inside your organization, depending on your size. But we wanted to choose metrics that were powerful so that as soon as you applied these within short order, you'd be beginning to see, you experience the benefits. So those metrics would be this: the number of instructions received by your business, okay? This is a busyness performance metrics. If you're not monitoring this metric, you are really missing a great opportunity to understand precisely what it is that your business is supporting. You as an IHL leader might have it in your head, but a spreadsheet is going to really let the rest of the business understand what it is that you're facing. IHL time allocation, okay? Transforming and maximizing the productivity yield is not just about adding additional resources, it's about what you achieve with it. And currently, 70% of most in-house teams is associated with business as usual grind, the MSA for the toner cartridge. What we need is the amount of time that in-house teams spending on that kind of work to massively reduce. Again, in the ultimate guide to legal operations, we've got some breakdowns in terms of what in-house teams typically focus on. At the moment, it's 70% business as usual. It's 20% strategic revenue making and 10% X factor. That needs to change right up. It needs to be around 25% of your time associated with business as usual, at least 50% of your time on strategic, and another 25% on X factors. The qualitative yield is going to be significant. So understanding what your people are spending their time on, not time recording, but time recording may be a means to actually extract that data, but you need to be able to start getting a greater sense of precisely which of those three quadrants, business as usual, strategic revenue making, X factor, that your team's allocated to. Contract closure, contracts closed, contract closure. This is an important metric. Contracts are business enabling, okay? So when people say, well, how have you enabled the business? If you point to a metric, very powerful. External spend cost management, okay? It's a cost management metric. Workflow type performance. This is another absolutely critical metric and analytics area that you need to engage in. It's firmly designed to drive enhanced performance. Internal client interactions as well, that's based around client satisfaction. What I want to do, because this is not a consultation, this is a introduction, right, to how metrics work, how do we implement it, the benefits, etc. But what we thought would be useful was just to pick on a couple of these and unpack it a little bit more, because ideally you can go back and self-author this, or of course, we can help you. But let's just look for a second at the benefits of examining external spend. Now, the data capture point is, you can see my mouse here. It doesn't need to be particularly elaborate. Maybe your team is running an e-billing system. Most teams don't, okay? Most teams don't. But the data can be extracted from an e-billing system, or it can be extracted from the invoices with key information pumped into an Excel spreadsheet, okay? Not particularly difficult. But the insights that allows you to actually start gleaning are really significant. First insight is aggregate spend, right? The metric that you want to be monitoring there is actual spend versus budgeted spend versus annual spend, right? And you just spend time exploring the deltas. But you're trying to track how much you spend, what are you spending it on, who are you spending it with? Are the costs recurring costs or one-off costs, okay? You're going to understand your performance against available budget, but the insights run a lot deeper than that, okay? You can start gleaning related insights, for example, around departmental spend. Who's the internal client? Who is our most significant client, right? Is 80% of our budget and our time being used by one client? Well, if so, maybe I better improve and step up the quality of my relationships with that client. Is that business unit consuming a disproportion of my available budget? Should I be looking for contribution? Okay. How much internal lawyer time is going into this matter? Again, is there a case for cost recuperation? External lawyers, etc. Continuing on in terms of available insights. Root cause analysis. External counsel or service provider invoices, when analysed, can give or shed light on systemic issues. Is the matter that required external support indicating the existence of an underlying compliance issue? Are there certain business units that are more risk prone than others? Okay, so again, you keep going down. I won't read it all. We're going to keep on time. But again, spend by law firm. How much per law firm, right? Are you spending more with one law firm? Are you able to, do you have the data you need when it comes to discussing the basis of their continuing engagement, right? Law firm comparison. So just by looking at the data associated with external spend, there's a whole myriad of insights which you can actually start to glean. So this is a wonderful example of the performance metric, which would obviously be, actual spend versus budgeted spend, right? And the data analytics, where you start asking questions. I mean, the analytics will give you the numbers that will populate actual spend and budgeted spend, but the analytics will also share light on, detailed insights that can help you adjust and performance manage that category. Okay. Another example, This is possibly what I would think, in addition to the number of instructions that your team is receiving, because that's just such an easy one. I think this is possibly one of the most important areas for data analytics, okay? By looking at the legal services request forms, or however it is, now, golden rule, you need to standardize that. If you haven't got a legal service request protocol, whether it's online or offline, you need to implement it. If you don't, you're denying yourself the ability to demonstrate what it is that you bring to the business, and nothing's going to change that, okay? It's golden rule, right? If you want to go for a run, you need to tie up your shoelaces, and the legal service request form is just that. The insights that you can get when you start analyzing that source of data, right, which can be implemented as simply as spending $3.50 with Microsoft and having legal at insert your name, your domain name, and then all of a sudden you have a single repository of all those requests, okay? It doesn't require a technology intervention. But all of a sudden, you've got detailed insight about anticipated workflows. You can start identifying workflow trends, internal client profiling, which we touched on. Where's the work coming from? Who's our biggest client? Seasonal busyness, right? How's that going to affect, look over onto the right here, the HR? When do I let people take holidays and the like? But the planning insights are phenomenally powerful, okay? Perhaps by having a 60, 180 forward view of workflow, anticipated workflow, you can start getting a sense as to whether or not your budget is adequate, right? You can start getting a sense of, well, you know what, do I need external skills, right, on this matter? But more important, you can start performance managing those relationships by actually asking vendors for insights onto particular new projects where you don't feel you're well placed. It's going to give you a clear sense of future resourcing requirements. Critically, right, preparatory actions. If you know that you've got a new shared services program which you've been asked to implement as a result of cost-saving measures, and it needs to be implemented, in third or fourth quarter or whatever, you can start taking steps now. And we all know that formative advice, this advice given early on in a project, can put in place parameters which allows the project to run forward more safely, okay? When we don't have the opportunity to do that, that's when we lose control of not only the ability to influence outcomes, but costs. So the pre-mobilization advantage that you get by understanding what's coming down the pipe is incredible. What kind of infrastructure might you need, okay? Vendors, maybe you might need self-help kiosks, playbooks, etc. But the point is that the legal services request form not only gives you a diagnostic in terms of what work you have been doing, right, the profile of your internal client, it also brings a forward-looking dynamic. And there's a simple adage: an informed environment is a controlled environment. You need your legal service request form, and you need to be running some basic analytics around that. I'm only going to cover this slide in part, but this is just about the number of instructions. The key things that allows you to do it. It's such an easy one to put in place. And you know what? Numbers, it could be a 5-minute conversation on an instruction, sorry, on a matter. That's an instruction. It could be an instruction which involves 3 weeks of support. It doesn't matter. You need to recall them all. You want to capture the full contribution of your IHL team. You want to get a greater sense of departmental workload, and that means you should be recording the total number of cases submitted, and you should have a broad and judicious interpretation as to what a case should be. If you're talking to somebody by a water cooler and they say, hey, what about this? Fair game, right? You should be able to capture as granular as that. What it's going to give you is a significantly more in-depth detail around the business matter profile. But when it comes to annual performance review or making your case for your budget for next year, to be able to talk meaningfully to the number of instructions that your team has actually handled, from which business unit, etc., it's a more authoritative conversation. It brings legitimacy and credibility to your requests. That's the power of numbers talking. Okay. I know we've gone through this at a fairly fast pace, but what are the conclusions? We're going to try and keep it really simple. Okay. The objective of your key performance indicator is to understand potential shortcomings in the performance of the department. Shortcomings are not something to be shied away from, right? They create a baseline upon which you know you can actually improve, right? The objective is to create long-term efficiency gains, both in terms of each employee's time and the company's money, and also in relation to the use of the resources that the team has at its disposal. IHL teams must start utilising empirical data, right, to your advantage, or you will get rolled over by it. By that I mean, if you don't self-author it and self-implement it, someone will do it for you, and it might be like those crazy consultants from, won't name names, but it led to the self-destruction of what was otherwise a fundamentally good team. Okay? Great lawyers, great people. You've got to use data that's objective, right? But it must be within your ability to influence, and it must be easy to record. Legal service request form, legal service request form, legal service request form. Let that be the primary basis for the collection of your data on a first round implementation. Okay? Review your data regularly, respond to it, and it's going to lead to an improvement in your legal operations. The skills that we've gained to operate in the legal profession are more than adequate to allow us to adopt the basic literacy around numbers in order to understand what's presented to us and how to respond to it. Let data empower your transformation agenda. There is data everywhere, particularly as we are transforming legal teams and the pressures or opportunities of digitization manifest themselves. Let the data explain and validate your decision making and inform your discussions and affect the discussions that you have with the business. So, do we have any questions at this point? I'll jump over to Nick. Have we got some questions that have come through that we might like to answer? None have been submitted. So that's good. Probably a factor of time. We're happy to take any questions that you have. You can submit them to info@gls.global or to your regular GLS contact, or you can shoot them through on the chat now. And whilst we might not get to them, or if you want to submit them after the bell, as it were, we'll respond when we make the Legal Operations Masterclass available for download. Okay, so in the absence of questions, what next? Well, the what next, what help's available. An absolute essential for all of you is you need to get on the end of our Ultimate Guide to Legal Operations, okay, which will come out, I believe it's next week when we publish that. Okay? It's our first book for the industry, and there are very, very few publications out there dealing with legal operations. So we're certainly in the Asia Pacific, Middle East region, so we're really proud to be bringing that to the market. Inside it, we're going to introduce the GLS Legal Transformation Tube Map. It's an interactive tool that sets out the essential components of legal operations, IHL performance guide, data analytics. Okay, watch out for that one. You can go on to the Legal Operations Centre. For those of you that know it, no explanation required. For those of you who don't, there are more than 300 plus solutions designed to help legal teams self-implement improvements to their operations to address that challenge of achieving more in a validated fashion. It'll talk to you about what metrics are available, what do they mean, how you measure them, and how to interpret them. We've got GLS workflow specific metrics. If you have a particular workflow, whether it be your contracting function, or it could be a corporate secretarial function, it could be a disputes function, we've got a range of performance metrics specific to those functions that we can share with you. GLS department-wide metrics, a nice tailored suite of performance metrics relevant to your entire team. There's a whole bunch of solutions, okay? Take your time and have a look at it. But the one thing that I really encourage you to do is take a good look at the Ultimate Guide to Legal Operations when it comes out next week. We'll make sure everybody that registered and attended the session will get a copy of that. Coming up, all right, so Seminar 4 will be available for download at gls.global, typically within 24 hours. The Ultimate Guide to Legal Operations, which I've talked about, free to download soon. You'll have the interactive map where you can go to each of the 15 critical functions of all in-house legal teams. And a little bit like planning your trip across the London tube system, you will see all of the essential stops that make that line perform, okay, giving you really rich insights. Okay, it's a wonderful example of the power of data analytics and performance metrics by looking under the bonnet. And then seminar 5, this is going to be a really cool topic, okay? There's lots of debates. You see it on different chat forums, etc. What do we need to be a success going forward? So we're really excited about bringing to you seminar 5 of our Legal Operations Masterclass, the Future Ready Lawyer. So we're going to look at some new law approach to performance metrics, the power of performance validation, etc., and what skill sets you actually need. So without any further ado, noting we've run a little bit more over time than we'd like, I'd just like to say thanks so very much to all of you for attending. Keep safe. Take some time to think about what we're doing here. Every month, every fortnight, we've got white papers going out, thought leadership going out. And one unassailable principle is that there is so much that you can achieve yourself to improve how effective your team is in a way that's demonstrable. There's never been a better time, right, to be an in-house lawyer. Frankly, there just hasn't. The world's a mess. Our businesses need us, but we have to start stepping up the extent to which we demonstrate the value we contribute. So thanks very much, and we'll see you next time.